Welcome to Breaking Bias on Broadway and Beyond with Colette Luckie and Dr. Heather Sanders, where they answer the elusive question, why is cultural competence critical in today's multicultural environment, and what are the measurable outcomes and benefits of sustainable allyship? Ready to become aware of, address, and eventually break our cultural biases? Well, let's get into the show. Please note, this episode was recorded prior to the United States presidential election of 2024.
Hello, welcome to Breaking Bias on Broadway and Beyond.
And beyond.
Yes, way beyond. Way beyond. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting us, I'm Colette Luckie, and this is my co-conspirator.
Yes, I'm Dr. Heather Sanders.
Absolutely. And today's episode, we are going to focus on the election and what DEI will look like post-election.
Is it November 4th?
5th.
5th.
Yes,
Okay.
I
Oh,
mailed
my goodness. You mailed your ballot.
Right, exactly. As you
Okay.
know, I'm bi-coastal. I live in California, but I also have a
such flex.
primary residence in Florida. So my decision was, of course, that Florida needed my vote more than California.
Right, yes.
So really happy to be able to participate, in a lot of the election activities in Florida.
Yeah.
To try to really combat what's happening down there. I haven't been a resident for very long, but I definitely feel the difference in being in California.
Yeah.
Politically, socially, there's definitely a undercurrent
Yeah.
of, oppression. I'll just say oppression, based on the legislations that the governor has enacted. And, it's a red state. The best we could do is hope that it would turn, purple at some point. And certainly there are a lot more Democrats there. And certainly, folks also that, really don't declare a party, but tend to vote on a more liberal perspective. So, why don't we just start the conversation on what we think it would look like, after November 5th.
Yeah. So I have a question, though, about something you just said. Because I'm not a huge civics person. I liked my, political classes.
Right.
But I don't know that anything actually stuck. So sorry about that, professors.
Right.
But you said you felt like Florida needed your vote more. And so what's interesting to me is I'm not bi-coastal, but I am a Tennessean. And I've lived in counties surrounding Davidson County, which is Nashville.
Okay.
And have felt like my vote was wasted in those counties because they are red.
Okay.
Right. And let me just clarify for all of our listeners, if you're red, we certainly support everyone's right to be. And I don't necessarily think that I am one thing or the other, actually. I am for who is for me.
Right.
It just so happens right now that red is just not an option.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I'm curious, is it better to vote where you'll get the electoral votes, or does your vote sort of just get lost in the sea of red if you are voting blue?
Well, I try to look beyond the current election, right? To say if there is a trend or a wave. Look what happened to Georgia, right? I think that it has to start somewhere. And with the influx of a lot of New Yorkers relocating to Florida, and in particular since COVID, that whole base has probably grown faster and more significantly than any other. So I think, it's important from that standpoint to go ahead and be a part of knowing that, that vote is there, even if it's just for data. God forbid if Kamala doesn't win, but we still have to think ahead. I remember, when Obama ran the first, time, and, I had the same pushback from a lot of, he's probably not going to run. Do you want to waste your vote? And I never thought it was a wasted vote because to me, it was a vote of confidence that even if he doesn't win, this is the type of person I want to support.
Yeah, it was
Is
your
this
voice.
It was, yeah, my voice, my candidate.
Yes.
So, obviously, I was just shocked as the nation, that he did. But again, I was committed to throw my vote there.
Yeah.
I think when you think about California, there are enough people here that are voting.
That'll vote, yeah.
That'll vote,
Okay.
My one vote is not going to change the electoral,
Okay.
kind of,
Yeah.
determination. So,
Sure.
so yeah, I think I can make a more of an impact,
Yeah.
where it's needed, in particular when you think about what Governor DeSantis is doing relative to education and, ceasing conversations around, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the academic environments that are
Yes.
being impacted. A lot of these
Yes.
jobs and, the curriculum,
Yeah.
Is being halted and
Yes.
eliminated.
Entire departments
Entire
are being
departments,
completely laid
right?
off. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, we talked oftentimes about allyship and organizations that, have strong diversity programs, let's say in Florida, like Disney. I was at one point,
Yes.
before we met, you may not know this about me, but I worked for Walt Disney down in Florida.
I did know that.
You
I did my homework.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you're stalking me. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But, they had, back at that time, they had a very strong recruiting effort to get more people of color, more women in leadership positions. And I was one that was, scouted and actually worked for Walt Disney for a couple of years.
Amazing.
Yeah. Before I, kind of relocated to California. So, unfortunately, Disney has gotten caught up in, they're located in a state where legislatively,
Yeah.
they have had to pause and cease a
Yeah.
lot
It's
of.
become illegal.
Yeah, and and I would say they did. I feel that they did not want to, but legally they are about to get the suing and the
Yes.
litigation and
Yes.
everything that comes as a result of this, and that's why I think it's so demonic, in a way that
Okay.
so now you are tying the process up legally, and socially. So again, you asked, why am I voting that way? But let's talk about what we think would happen. I think we have to be somewhat, not, over expect, right? Because things don't happen overnight. But one of the things that I think will be very evident, I believe that President Kamala will really have an impact on policies, policies related to health care, education, and that type of thing, social justice, that has been her platform anyway, for most of her career. I believe also some of the other things that will be impacted, I believe that there will be sort of a scouting and vetting of women of color, in particular Black women, in leadership positions, in government, in corporations. You know how people, when something happens, now everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. I think, again, what we have to be careful of is that it's not just a flavor of the year or of the tenure for that presidency, and really begin to think of, okay, that's going to happen because it typically does, but now what can we do to embed in that wave, which will probably Civil Rights 3.0, what can we do to sustain and make sure that these assignments, aren't just, again, performative. They aren't just temporary.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so my response to that is twofold,
Okay.
because I agree that in some way, and I love that you called her President Kamala. That was prophetic.
President Kamala.
Yes. That the current VP will create a larger platform and larger visibility for perhaps Black women leaders who have been overlooked. I do believe that.
Yes, absolutely.
I also believe, though, that it's should be happening because Black women are the most educated, growing population in America.
Absolutely.
We are a hyper-educated bunch, so it makes sense that we hold some of these leadership positions.
Right.
We're qualified.
Right.
we certainly have the ability, experience, and like I said, education. And so just from a mere meritocracy standpoint, which is very debatable, and I don't necessarily buy into that, but if we're talking about education and experience and expertise, then yeah, it makes sense that we would begin to get more jobs, right? Yeah. However, okay,
comma,
I'm not,
however,
comma, right,
however,
semicolon,
comma.
whatever,
Yeah.
like, I do also, and maybe I'm being too much of a pessimist, and so I'm not trying to sway you, but I almost feel like, almost like when Obama won,
Right.
I was just incredibly overwhelmed with joy.
Right.
I was pregnant when he won, and I said, my first child, is going to have a black president.
Right.
And then, as you know, they just started falling out after that. So all of my kids had a black president.
Right.
So that was amazing. But I always had this underlying anxiety that people were going to think that somehow meant America was this much better place.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And you see
Yeah,
what happened.
exactly.
I mean, after that, we got Trump. It was almost like we got punished
Yes,
for
for
having
that.
a black
Right.
president. And so
Yes.
I'm like, not only would Kamala Harris be black, she'd be female.
Right.
And oh my God, now everybody's
Yeah.
talking about the fact that she's childless or did
Doesn't
not
have any
birth a child.
biological
Right,
children.
right. She's
Right.
certainly a
Yeah,
mother.
yeah.
So I just,
Well,
that makes me nervous.
Right. When has that ever stopped us? I mean, if you think
that's
about
true.
from the 1600s, 1700s, there's always been a risk.
Yeah.
There's always been an onslaught that it has always ratcheted up,
Yeah.
you know, in a violent way, in a political way, in an economic way, you know, in a social way, because it's people losing power or feeling like
Yes,
they're
feeling
losing
like
power.
they are, right, the
because they don't
illusion.
want to share, you know, power.
Yeah.
But I say, you know, by any means necessary. I mean,
okay. All right, Malcolm.
no, I mean, you know, we have to ignore that. I think part of that is their message that, hey, don't do that, otherwise we're going to
Yeah.
stomp you even harder.
Leading with fear.
Yes. So I think we have to think like, okay, yeah, that's coming.
Okay.
They're going to push harder.
Okay.
But every time they push harder, we push harder.
Which isn't the slogan, we fight, we win? That's the
Yes,
slogan.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
And if you don't fight, you lose.
You don't have, right. You
Then
know you're going to lose.
You know you're going to lose. So, you know, I say, you know, bring it on. I mean,
All
we
right.
always are going to figure out how to, you know, usurp, you
Okay.
know, that, you know, terrorism, because it is terrorism. It's psychological and social terrorism.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that certainly there will be more community engagement. People will now want to
Yes.
hear, okay, what does the black female voice, you
Yeah.
know, what is she saying? So that they can be on the right side of, you know, understanding, okay, what, you know, processes or protocols, you know, should be put into place.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, there will be, in terms of economic, I think there will be that wealth gap. We may see a shift in the wealth gap, and maybe there's more equity there because there'll be more job opportunities. I
Right.
mean, it's definitely a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, you know, you get the policies that are more focused on, you know, women of color. You get the, you know, community engagement. You get the economics. You know, fix the healthcare,
Yeah.
you know, system. I think all of these will just make a stronger, you know, society overall.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think we have to be, like, conservative and patient because it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, Obama had 8 years. There were still things that were left undone that, you
Yeah.
know, he had on his vision board.
Right.
You know, and I imagine that as a woman, as a black woman, if he thought he had a lot of pushback, can you imagine
My
what she's
goodness.
going to,
Yeah.
you know, experience? But we just have to, you know, be right there with her in the trenches. You
Absolutely.
Know, in each of our environments, you know,
Yeah.
fighting for, you know, just having that voice and lending that voice and not being afraid to, you know, come up against.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people say, oh my goodness, there's going to be like a civil war, you
Yeah.
know, on January 25th or
Yep.
whatever. I don't know where you're planning to be, but I'm planning to be at the inauguration.
Yes, and we've talked about that.
Yes.
And I, again, and this is a personal barrier,
Okay.
my anxiety.
All right.
It terrifies me to be in Washington, whether she wins or loses. I feel like it might be worse if she wins.
Well, I'm not going to Washington if she loses.
Right.
I mean, what would I go to Washington if she loses for?
Right.
But I say, yes, I'm there. If I perish, I perish. I'll be like, the woman in the Bible. Right. I'll be like Queen, Hadassah or whatever.
Yeah.
If I perish, I perish.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm planning to be there and celebrate. And they said the same thing on January 6th.
Oh,
what
yeah.
did they say?
Yeah.
We're going to tear this country apart. And they had that, obviously that
Their
event.
tantrum.
That happened to be on my birthday.
Oh.
So my birthday is now, living in infamy.
Right.
But, okay, and what have they done? Have they ripped across? Have they torn the country? They said they were going to just tear neighborhoods down. There were going to be fires. People were going to be burned and lynched and driven out.
And Trump is still repeating that rhetoric. He is still talking about bloodbaths and the repercussions if he doesn't win.
Right.
And I just want to say this. I know that there are very vocal Trump supporters.
Right.
I personally will never be able to understand support of that person.
Right.
But I have to say that if the polls were 80-20
Right.
in Vice President
Or really
Harris's
60-40.
favor. Right. But the fact that it's so close terrifies me because we go into so many organizations and meet so many people. And I'm wondering, do you mean what you say? Because somebody is voting for him.
Of course.
People are aligning with him.
Yes, of course.
They believe they're being replaced. They believe that immigrants are
taking over the country,
are violent
and
dangerous.
Right.
And so that is what terrifies me, is that the margin is not larger.
Right. They've always believed that, though. They've just have not had a conduit that made them feel I can express that in my vote.
Right. Not so blatant.
Yeah, not so blatant.
White supremacy is very sneaky.
Right. Which goes back to your point about, after Obama, they, came back even stronger, trying to tear everything down. And look at now the Supreme Court. Look at,
my goodness.
women's rights. I mean, if you look at all of these things, yes, they absolutely have.
Yeah.
But I still look at, okay, they've done all of that, but we have a candidate that's a black female. That should not even be, if they were as strong and as powerful. Right. She should not even be on the ticket.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
So there has to be, a lot of contingency, a lot of people that are out there that are thinking differently, even for her to become the vice president.
Yes.
Right? So I'm just buoyed by the fact that we're probably the last, country in the world to have not only a female, but certainly, a woman of color that's, going to lead the most powerful country in the world. And I believe she's going to win. Now, we can also talk about what if she doesn't?
Yeah.
What do you think how that's going to impact DEI and the work that we do with our clients?
Well, I'd be lying if I said that I did not strongly believe there will be an impact on our work.
Yeah.
And this is not about, certainly I enjoy making money, right?
Right.
But this is beyond that. This is about who we are going to be in the future as a people, right? Because we already know we've got a lot of work to do, but DEI was sort of this commitment to actively be trying to become something else.
Yes, and now it'll become harder.
So stopping that, right.
Yeah, it'll become harder.
Stopping that is like, wait a minute, do I want my kids to have kids? Should I have had kids? Like, do I want people growing up in this country? And we've had a whole lot of people decide they don't want to live in this country.
Yeah, exactly. There's a mad, what do they call it? A Blacksidus, right?
Yes,
where people are moving to Ghana, moving to Portugal, moving to, a lot of
Belize, all these places.
Yeah, Belize, right. Costa Rica. Yep. Mexico. I certainly understand, that effort too.
Yeah.
But I also believe that, that there's a good force that will prevail. I'm not saying that I ever feel racism will be eliminated in this country or across the globe. I just feel that it is a stain on humanity, And unfortunately, it's one that replicates very quickly through generations and generations and generations. So I don't know if it will ever, just be, a balanced society. But I think that we're here at this point, at this time, to do what we can do. And I mean, I feel like this purpose that is in our hearts, I feel it's like a God thing, that even we are interested. This is hard work.
Yeah.
Trying to help people change their thoughts, their mindsets, to explore their history, regardless of what color they are.
Absolutely.
And to face that and say, okay, I'm going to do something, about this. I'm not going to perpetuate, this, human stain and help it replicate, but I'm going to do something to at least stamp it out, in my environment.
In my circle of influence, for sure. Yeah. And you're right. I've actually, both of us come from church, and I've often considered what we do a ministry of sorts.
This is a ministry.
Yeah. You have to be called to it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, and we're not on a pulpit, but we are, in corporations helping people to, honor
challenging
humanity.
them to think differently, honor humanity.
Yes.
What the Old Testament scripture, live justly.
Yes.
I can't remember the exact scripture, but I do love it. And I really do believe that there is a certain divineness and spiritual aspect of this work.
Right.
And maybe that's a whole other conversation that we get to have, right? About
a purpose-driven life, right?
Well, that, and also, how we preserve and guard our own spirits. Because you said something about, some of these environments feeling evil.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that, talking specifically about this topic, I had a client in California. We were actually doing a listening session. And it was a field in the arts. It was an organization in the arts. And we were doing a listening session. And I think several of the folks involved in the listening session had sort of been commiserating out, prior to the listening session. And so, just for transparency, the listening session was all white males, with the exception of one Asian male.
Okay.
And so one of the older white males pulled out a notepad, and he read something to me and my co-facilitators, almost like a manifesto. And the message was, we don't want you here. We don't need this work. What you're doing is divisive. And
this was in California. So
this was in what most people would consider liberal California.
Yes, exactly. And I think, it's important to, emphasize that point, because a lot of people think, all of California is Democrat. They have one of the highest, Republican enclaves in California. I mean, if you think about California and the economics of California, Beverly Hills, La Jolla, Newport Beach, some of the places that we go to service clients,
right?
Those are very conservative, very wealthy,
And so I think in that moment, not only did I feel a sense of psychological violence, I literally felt like there was almost a threat to me and the staff that I brought with me, a sense of physical threat.
Wow.
To the point where when we left that space, I called an emergency meeting and said, we really need to talk about a safety plan, a physical safety plan, if we're going to continue to engage with this client in person, because that did not feel safe at all. And so when I think about what another Trump term could mean, or even if VP was to become the president, people who have that mindset, who are determined to not evolve, what could potentially that mean for us who are practitioners of this work, who are ministers of the gospel of DEI?
Right. Well, listen, I believe in the right to carry.
I hear you. I got you. Okay. All right.
Well, this is what I say. I mean, I still look historically on, the Ku Klux Klan. To me, I still see them, you're riding in groups, a gang, you're cowards.
Yeah.
You never did any of this stuff like one-on-one. You had to, right?
Yeah.
And, again, going back to January 6th. Okay. Yeah. But then what happened? You made all of that, problem, and then you all retreated like roaches, back into wherever you came from. We haven't heard from you since.
Yeah.
Now you're coming out again because, hey, there's another election. But my thing is, if you were going to tear this country apart because you felt like the last election was, rigged or whatever, then what have you been waiting for?
Yeah.
So are you really going to, cause all of this havoc?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not so sure.
You're not convinced, huh?
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm sure there will be episodes, and obviously we have to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think that, if, God forbid, Kamala doesn't succeed, I would rely on these companies like Coca-Cola, Google, Bank of America.
Yes.
These people have ratcheted up their DEI programs, right?
Yes.
And there will be, I think, another kind of uprising to combat a lot of this.
Okay.
So I don't think our work will go away because we are multifaceted. I mean, we don't just do DEI. We do that work. Obviously, that's what we're talking about
For
here.
sure.
But we do other work, leadership development, and we always weaving.
Absolutely.
Think about it. Whether we're doing executive coaching, change management, or development, we're weaving DEI into those processes and conversations on some level.
That's right.
So I don't think it's going to turn, just like, oh, we'll be, just out of work.
No.
I don't think that.
No, I don't think that, but I do, I have to just be honest that I do think about our physical
safety and
emotional and spiritual safety as well, because it really can wear on you to walk into some of these places where you can sometimes, the resistance is palpable.
Yes, exactly. And I will say towards that has been my entire career.
Okay.
I have walked into spaces where, you hired me, but you hired me hoping I'd fail. You hired me knowing you weren't going to support me. And I've had to survive that, on my own. Obviously before I, launched my own consulting practice, I was in corporate America for most of my career in various, leadership positions. And, I could feel the resentment, the fact that, oh, you're just as educated or more educated, oh, wow, you have a voice and you're not afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to quiet her or, we
humble
thought
her.
Exactly. We thought we just hired you, so you could sit in there and say that, as you mentioned earlier, like a diversity, token, so to speak. And then you come in, with good ideas and wanting to make change.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily want you to author that or get the credit, for some of that. So, I just see this as a continuation of the fight on some level. Okay. And I'm not, I'm from the Bronx, so I'm... So, I'm ready to, Mama Dukes.
I see you, Cardi B. All right.
So, I still have some, fight in me, and I think there's other ways, stealth ways that we can get to, helping the change happen.
Well, for sure, we're brilliant. How we even came to know one another and for you to sort of take me under your wings of sorts is because I was so influenced by my cousin, Dr. Jean Porter King.
Yes.
Who is your dear friend.
Yes, my dear friend.
Has always not only professionally engaged and, really influenced spaces to be more intentional around their efforts to, promote and support women leaders.
Yes, exactly.
but she has literally walked the walk.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just such a living, walking example
Yes.
and model of what that means. And so I'd love to talk to her post-election.
She will definitely be on an episode. We're going to dedicate an entire episode to
love
her
it.
and the
Yeah.
women the things that she's been doing,
Yes.
for women in leadership and aspiring women
Yes.
in leadership. And, that has been her jam for the last,
Yes.
20 years. And she certainly was responsible for a lot of the global work that I did in Europe and Asia and South America.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that, but I was actually working under her consulting banner for a lot of that work, and using a lot of her materials theory, and she's a phenomenal researcher, an absolute brilliant facilitator.
Yes.
And so she was my mentor. So it's sort of like, it's being, passed down. And I just love the legacy, of those relationships, and certainly, working with you, and, how passionate you are about, racial equity and social justice. And, I've learned a lot from you that, I think that, I don't think I knew that before. Dr. Heather, thank you. Right.
Oh, thank you,
I really,
Colette.
Appreciate that. So, so we'll, November 5th is, just what? How many days away?
Oh my gosh, it's around the corner.
2 weeks, maybe?
Yeah.
2 weeks away. So we'll, see what happens. I've already purchased my ticket to, DC. And, I think it'll be okay.
All right.
I really do. I'm looking forward to the change and this next effort that her presidency will usher in.
Yes.
I believe it's really going to just help all facets of society, and I think
and be of benefit to everyone.
Everybody,
not just Black folks, not just women folks.
Yes,
everybody.
Everybody will benefit.
Yes.
Everybody will benefit, and it's not an exclusion. We always talk about inclusion.
Yeah.
And then I think there are certain leaders who their whole platform is really exclusion. You never really even hear them talking about inclusion for their own. It's just the basis
or any
of the
sense
whole
of
thing.
unity or togetherness.
No. So we have to fight that. So
we do.
Okay.
We do. Okay, I know we're wrapping this up.
Yes.
But as you know, you're trying to forget. But today is my lucky day.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I think I need to get married again, right? So that I can get another last name these.
No.
All right. So what does that mean?
Okay. This is a segment where I get to ask you anything. You don't know the question, but you have to answer it.
I have never agreed to that.
Well, here we go.
All right. Go ahead.
We're talking about Kamala, her influence, and her being president, potentially, right?
Okay.
Do you think if VP Harris becomes the president, that more Black women, more straight Black women, will be interested or open to dating white men?
This is a question for the Kardashians, not for me.
No, I'm serious, because I know there is a sense of loyalty in our community, right?
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, will it just inspire women folks like yourself to be more open to other demographics?
Let me answer that in the converse. I think more white men will feel safer approaching Black women and women of color in general. Because it's not that they don't think we exist. They are very aware of us. They have been since we came over, on the slave ships.
Right.
We've always been on their radar. It just hasn't been, socially acceptable, to just outright. Right. Now, obviously, there's a whole contingency of, biracial couples and all of that. And I'm all for that, because I also think that that is the impetus behind diluting racism. Because these grandparents, now I have a biracial grandchild.
Right.
You know, in my own family,
Right.
I have seen, you know, nephews that have coupled with white women, and now have, you know, and their grandparents of that child, staunch Trump supporters, staunch racists, but somehow this little boy
Yeah.
who has white and black features,
Yeah.
they idolize him. And I think
Yeah.
it has definitely made them more aware of what happens to black males and the social injustice.
Yeah.
Right? What happens to little, you know, black girls and the
Yeah.
social injustice.
Yeah.
So I think it does soften the heart. You know, I always talk about heart transformation.
Yeah.
And I think that type of heart transformation is almost intuitive. Like they don't even know it's happening. Some of them will never come to a workshop or ask for coaching, you
Yeah.
know, cultural competence coaching from us, right? That's just nothing that they want. However, it's happening on a more intimate level.
Yes.
So the answer is yes on both sides. I
Okay.
think there will be more African American women that will, you know, the aperture will be open,
Yeah.
you know, to that experience. And I definitely think there will be more white men who start to like say, okay, you know, I feel freer. I feel like I have some kind of license,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
for that. And yeah, I say bring that on too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
I love it.
Okay,
Wasn't
well,
too bad, was it?
that wasn't too bad, but you know, I don't know. You know, you'll come up with something for the next one that may be a little bit beyond my boundaries. But I'll let
Well,
you
it
know.
is beyond.
There you go. And on that note,
It's been a pleasure, my friend.